I did receive the email. So if you want me to send you another one, and he said no, he goes, I'll find it and get back to you.
Hello, everyone. So glad to see everybody's faces. We've got a bunch of folks joining, coming in from the meeting room or from the waiting room. So we'll just give it about another minute or two here. It's not quite the top of the hour, so I don't want to miss anybody, of course. Thank you all for being here. Hello, hello. Everyone is joining. You'll notice we are in meeting mode. So to make sure that everyone can hear each other, let's go ahead and keep ourselves on mute unless you've got something that you'd like to add, but we welcome you to come off mute and chat as you feel the urge. Every time I think I've got everybody out of the waiting room, somebody else pops in. It's awesome. All right. For those who are just joining, we're going to give it another minute or so here, just as folks are still joining. All right. Go. Thank you all for joining today. I appreciate it. It's been a couple of months, so I'm glad everybody found their way back to the space.
Perfect. I had practiced for about the last 48 hours or so.
All right. Let's see here. Give it another few seconds here. I'll see if we've kind of hit our capacity. It's always hard when it's right at the top of the hour because I'm sure I'm meeting some people who came off of a 2 o'clock and I always feel like jumping from one thing to another. So, all right, a couple more people joining us. All right, so I think if it's all right, Kelly, I might ask you to start watching the waiting room for me. I'm trying to keep up with it, but you'll be able to grab anybody who's still joining. So thank you everyone for joining us today in the June Digital Equity webinar. For anyone who hasn't been on one of our calls in the past, my name is Erin Larandos, and I am the Digital Equity Program Manager here at ACA. We are, of course, the administering entity for the state for both the BEAD and digital equity grant programs from NTIA. And we like to carve this space out to ensure that all of our stakeholders have a chance to hear our updates and then have some good conversation as we are moving kind of in this gray area between the planning and then into the implementation. So, since it's been a couple of months, and I know that we've met a lot of new friends out on our engagement tours and through our other spaces recently, I would love to do just a little introduction in the chat. If folks want to, they feel comfortable, I invite you to go ahead and put your name and organization in the chat so that if there are additional connections that can be made between the folks who are joining, everybody kind of knows where people are from, and it's always super helpful to me when I'm in other meetings to have that information. So, and just by show of hands, who has not been to one of these before? You can use your little reaction button or throw something up. Let's see here. I see a couple. Yep, awesome, fantastic. All right, so especially for our new folks, definitely put your information in the chat if you feel comfortable and can make some good connections here. Fantastic. Okay, so before we get started, I mentioned my name is Erin and I am here in the broadband office. We have a couple other folks on our call here from our office that I'd just like to recognize. First, we have Kelly. She's our engagement manager, and so she's been helping out, letting people in, and she'll keep her eye on the chat for me and all that sort of thing. And then we also have Jamie with us today, who is one of our, well, she is the senior broadband program manager on the BEAD side of things. And so we're always happy to have folks from both sides of the coin here, and invite that, of course. And I think that's everybody from our team who's joined today. So fantastic. All right, so let's see here. Because it has been a little while, I'd like to take just a few minutes and give everyone a general update on where we are with the Digital Equity Act program here in Arizona, and then kind of some ideas that we have looking forward. Of course, a lot of our looking forward pieces are contingent on things getting approved from the federal government, so a lot of TBDs, but I'll just kind of share that with you. And then the thing that I'd like to spend some more time on today, since we are, again, in kind of this interim space between planning and implementation, is I'd love to pick up any conversations for folks in this group who maybe attended the digital equity or digital inclusion working group meetings that the governor's office were holding. Unfortunately, I missed last month's, and then they're on pause right now. And so I just want to make sure that any, anything that anyone heard in those groups or any conversations that were being had can have some space in this group as well until, things settle down and we figure out what's going on in all of these different spaces. So that'll give you an idea of what I'd like to do today with our time together. And again, as I mentioned at the top, although a lot of people have joined since then, I really do want this to be, a conversation space. That's why we try to do these as meetings instead of, webinars. I don't like talking at myself. I know what I sound like. I don't want to hear other people's voices. So please feel free at any time, pop anything in the chat that you'd like, go ahead, raise your hand. If there's anything that you'd like to ask questions on or add to the conversation. All right, so as I mentioned, first thing I'd like to do is just give a very brief update on where we are in the process. Since we do have a couple of people who are new, I'll start a little bit further back in history and then get us up to current day. So here in Arizona, we did spend the last year writing a digital equity plan, which was approved back in April from the NTIA, and that is available on our website if folks haven't had a chance to take a look at that. That is basically our roadmap for how we want to utilize funding that we get in the future for digital equity. So how do we do that? Well, the second part of that phase was an application, again, to NTIA for funding to actually implement the ideas that we landed on throughout writing the plan. And so we did submit our application for the capacity grant at the state level at the end of May. Forgot what month it was. Right at the end of May, that was due. And so right now we are in what's called a curing period with the federal government. All of their grants go through a curing period in which they are able to make sure we crossed all our T's and dotted all our I's and all the pieces line up and all of that. And that is a process that ensures that whatever we're planning to do does make sense up and down on that federal level, and it really allows us to have a conversation with the federal government before we finalize everything. And so we are still waiting to hear back on our application and those pieces. The goal is that we'll move out of that curing period 45 days or up to 45 days after we apply. But we do know that based on when the planning grants were awarded, the first state's capacity grants will be awarded no later than August of this year. So we're still assuming that that's the timeline that we'll start to see movement here in Arizona as well. There is one caveat to all of that, which I just share with this group so that we're being transparent on this process and how everything works. When we applied, we anticipated that most of our money would be distributed through a sub-grant process, which was a choice that every state was able to make to either run programs themselves through their state broadband office or whoever was running the Digital Equity Act, or to do sub-grants. And just because of the vast array of really important work that's going on in the state, we did decide to primarily operate with the sub-grant process. And I bring that up because part of the requirements from the federal government is that we have those sub-grantees identified before funding truly comes to the state. So we have up to 9 months after our application is approved to identify all of those sub-grantees. So we still anticipate that to be the process that we'll be following. And we, again, based on these timelines, I don't have exact dates, but we anticipate that our subgrant process will officially start in the fall of this year. So that will be the opportunity for organizations across the state who are already doing work in the digital equity space or would like to increase the capacity for that work to apply to us for subgrants. And we do have a survey that is available. It's been shared through our newsletter, and I'd be happy to grab that link and share it again here. If there are organizations who are considering applying for a subgrant, even at this point, you know, not having it fully fleshed out or anything is perfectly fine, because of course we haven't given you what those requirements are going to be yet. We invite you to fill out this survey just so that we can kind of start to see what types of programs and projects might be requesting funding in the state. So I'll grab that momentarily here. But are there any questions on any of those pieces for what we've done so far or what we're looking at right now before I move into a couple of other items for the future? Isaac, I see here. What is the status of including or excluding the recent update? Oh, okay. So the FCC broadband map data, that's really more on the BEAD side of things, and so I will pass that along to our parts of the team that are working on that. You know, unfortunately, it's just not quite as relevant to this whole group. So thank you for that, though. I will pass that along. Unless Jamie, feel free to reply to Isaac if you'd like in the chat, but
yeah, I'll answer because that is a common question.
Okay.
Since we are still going through the challenge process and collecting data through the end of June, it is too soon to answer that. We really want to take a look at all the data before those decisions are made. So more to come next month. If I'm answering the one that's in the chat.
Yeah, from Isaac.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Also just wanted to say hi to Nicole. Nicole Umayam is here. She is our federal program officer for NTIA. So she is our direct connection to this process at the federal level. And she is right here in Arizona. So I just wanted to say hi. And I don't know, Nicole, if you wanted to say hi to this group or if you have anything right now. Otherwise, I'm happy to leave you alone.
Hey everybody, nice to meet you. You know, like I said, I am a resource here for program information for BEAD and digital equity. I guess, Isaac, I'll state that Arizona's plans about their broadband map are in their volume 1 of their initial proposal. And then they're in process with the challenge process as well. So they'll make some final determinations about which data sets they're pulling from the FCC, crossing that with their availability data as well. But like Jamie said, they're still in process there, and there's quite a few moving pieces.
All right. And I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that Kelly beat me to the punch to serve that, or to put that survey link in the chat there. So that last post from Kelly is a link to the potential subgrantee survey. Again, this is no requirement or anything like that for future funding or future application. It's just for us to get an idea of what people are thinking about, what types of projects they're kind of having bounce around in their mind. Okay. Any other questions on the current status for the DE side of things? Heather, I see your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Erin. A question, I did fill out that survey. There was one section where it was asking whether or not your organization had received other federal or state grants. And obviously as part of higher education, yes, to an extensive length. So I did not take the time to list all of them. Is that something like, should I send that to you, or?
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Really at this point, that question is meant to kind of gauge what sort of experience some of our smaller organizations in the state especially might have with larger grants, just because while subgrantees are not under the exact same, reporting requirements up to the federal government, what the reporting comes to us will obviously get rolled up, and we just want to make sure that we're providing support for folks who maybe haven't been part of a subgrantee process before, haven't been part of a federal grant before, things like that. So that's perfectly fine. And I do have some information on that coming up in the future plans section. So I'll come back to that. But thank you for that question. And that's a really valid point. It's some folks here have had more experience than others. So we're just trying to gauge that right now. Mariana, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I put the same question in the chat. Thanks. Just curious, from August on, what is the tentative? I know it's all tentative.
Yeah.
This kind of time frame idea.
Totally understood. So it is very tentative right now. We do not have any of those dates yet. It is really all contingent on exactly, what happens during our curing, what happens, for that final approval. And then again, as I mentioned, as soon as we get the sign off on our application and those pieces, we'll move into that subgrant process, because we only have 9 months, to get all of that figured out. So the fall is unfortunately as specific as I can get right now. The August date that I mentioned is at the federal level. That's the late, how do I say this correctly? So the first planning grants were released in August of last year. And so, or the year before. And so because of that timeline, the first capacity grants have to be starting to roll out by then too. So that's what that's from. It's not related to us specifically. It's at a nationwide level. And hopefully I realize that's like a non-answer because I don't have an exact date, but as soon as we get more specific timelines, we will be sharing with this group and of course all of our stakeholders. Wayne, I see your question here. As I understand it, the tribal subgrants are on a separate track. Does the mentioned survey apply to tribes as well? So no, in relation to the tribal capacity and planning grant that is opening up from NTIA, and maybe I might tap Nicole again just to talk about that, just because that is a direct application to NTIA, and that opens September 25th, if I have that date correct. So the survey is specifically for subgrants from our digital equity pot of money here in Arizona. Now, that is, of course, a really good segue into the conversation for all of our tribal stakeholders that a tribal entity could apply to us for a program from the capacity subgrant, and then also apply for capacity and planning money through the tribal set aside in September. It's just that it can't be for the same project. And please, Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong on that piece.
Nothing to correct, Erin.
Yay, I got it right. Thank you. But Wayne, thank you for asking that. And if there are any questions on that, we can always, go more in depth if there are questions still after that as well. Okay. Any other questions in the so far part? Okay. All right. So just a little bit more information on some of the things that we are planning, getting ready for that subgrant process. Of course, again, exact dates are TBD. You're going to hear that a lot. But over the summer, we are hoping that, as we move through curing and we kind of get a little bit better idea of what's going to happen in the fall, that we can help prepare organizations who might be applying for subgrants to us. And one of the ways that we plan to do that is right here in this space, not next month, but our August meeting. We are going to have guest speakers from Local First Arizona here to kind of talk about what it means to be a subgrantee in some of these larger federal grants. And we'll be able to have a conversation about, diving into more of those details if they're far enough along that we can share them. Otherwise, it might be a little theoretical at that point still, just because, you know, again, I don't have these exact timelines. But please keep coming to this space, because this is going to be where you're going to learn those pieces. And I think that opportunity in August will be really great for folks, you know, at any stage in their grant, you know, request journey, right? Folks who have had lots of grants under their belt might benefit from, you know, hearing the concerns of smaller organizations and vice versa. We do anticipate that a number of these subgrants will be, you know, coming through partnerships. And so some of the organizations that have more experience might be with folks that don't. And so just having that level playing field is our goal with that conversation. We just, you know, started those conversations with Local First about coming and presenting to us. And so, you know, keep your ear to the ground. You'll see information about those upcoming webinars as well through, I mean, you're getting the emails from us, so keep reading them, and some more details will be shared as we kind of move through that process. As far as other big nationwide stuff, I just wanted to point out, let me grab this link really quick here. I've sent way too many emails today, you guys. NDIA, so the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which is a nonprofit that kind of deals in this space, is hosting a webinar very soon. If you're not on their lists, hey, I should have had this up. I apologize. Here it is. Okay, so they are hosting specifically for the Native Entity Capacity Grants info session next week, Wednesday, the 26th, from 2 to 3 Eastern. And I'm just going to copy and paste this entire email into the chat for folks who might be interested. No, I can't, just kidding, it's too big. All right, just to save the date information then. So this is through, again, the National Digital Inclusion Alliance. And so this is going to be nationwide information, not necessarily specific to Arizona, but I just wanted to put it on folks' radars because, you know, obviously that is the next big thing for a lot of our stakeholders here in Arizona. They also have hosted similar webinars or similar info sessions regarding the other application that would go directly to NTIA, which is a competitive grant program. And I can grab that link to that recording here from their website momentarily. But those are really great things to keep on your radar as well. You know, again, a lot of it is at the nationwide level, and so not Arizona specific, but you know, it's good to see what other folks are thinking about and asking about and getting that national perspective. That second pot of money that I just mentioned, the competitive grant, is another thing that I wanted to talk about today, actually, if folks are ready for the next piece of the conversation. The governor's office here in Arizona had been hosting their own set of working groups and webinars regarding the both the BEAD and digital equity pieces. And I know one of the conversations that had happened in the last few of those in the digital inclusion working group kind of focused around the competitive grant. And as I mentioned, I don't think everyone was quite on yet, but I unfortunately missed the last meeting of that group when that competitive grant conversation happened. And in the interim, there have been a few changes in staffing at the governor's office, and I don't want to lose that thread that was happening in that conversation. So was anyone in this group, in that last digital inclusion working group meeting, and willing to kind of share a synopsis with this group about what maybe had been discussed regarding the competitive grant? I'm really, I didn't seed the audience with someone who I knew was there, but I was really hoping that somebody had the opportunity.
Aaron, this is Steve.
Hi, Steve, how are you?
So good. So I also missed that meeting,
Okay.
but Maggie did publish the notes of that meeting.
Okay.
They're in my newsletter, but that is available for anybody who missed that.
Do your notes go into depth on what was discussed in the
Those are her notes, not
There are
mine.
her notes. Oh, right. 'Cause you
Those were
weren't
her
there.
notes, but I
Okay.
published the links to those
Okay.
minutes.
And it's perfectly fine if, no one in this group was there. Yeah, I guess a lot of us had other things going on that day, which is too bad. I apologize. So, to answer the question as to what those were, these are the intergovernmental, I'm gonna get the acronym wrong, ICVAC. It's hold on a sec. You guys, when you don't have meetings for like 2 months, you feel like you've never run a meeting before in your life. Okay. So these are the Interagency and Community Broadband Advisory Council Working Group meetings, which is why there's an acronym, because that's a mouthful. So these meetings were hosted on a monthly basis. With the working group pieces were on a monthly basis, and then there were key people who were kind of on this this whole big advisory board that kind of rolled up to the governor's office. And so since our office, of course, ultimately reports to the governor's office, we were involved, but we weren't running the meetings. And so so that's what those were. And initially there were a number of working groups that focused on all of the parts of BEAD and digital equity. So there was an infrastructure group, a mapping group, there was outreach, there was digital inclusion, workforce, different things like that. And then in the last couple of months, kind of whittled them down a little bit into larger groups that had common themes emerging. And so, and then at that time, I believe there was a tribal working group added as well. So that's in addition to the other tribal spaces. And so that's okay. If, it was kind of a little bit of a shot in the dark. As I said, I did not prepare anyone in the audience to talk about that, but I will review all of that information as in between now and our next meeting. But the bigger piece here, and if it wasn't discussed, that's also fine, because we can just start talking about it. The bigger piece of that is this additional application that eligible entities, being a state or organizations within the state, can actually apply directly to the federal government, to NTIA, for a competitive grant. So this is a separate pot of money than what's coming to the states for the capacity building piece. It's separate from that tribal set aside. It's separate from the planning money, all of that. This is direct to NTIA. And the reason that I thought we might talk about it in here is because our anticipated involvement in that from ACA's perspective is more to bring the conversation together and support an application, as opposed to being the organization that applies directly. And so I just really wanted to kind of bring that up to this group, that if that's, we want to see a good application from Arizona for this, and what does that look like, and how can ACA help bring those key people together. I've been in some conversations, with various groups that have maybe started to think about pieces here, and I've been doing my best to connect those people via email. But I figured since we were all in the same room, we might have a bigger conversation about it. But we can also table this for next month, because I want to make sure that I don't waste anybody's time if this wasn't part of anyone else's recollection from those last meetings. Heather, yeah, do you mean the competitive grant, or from the pieces that are within the states? Yes, okay. Yeah, definitely. I can pull some links together and share that. The NOFO hasn't been released yet for that specific application, but we anticipate, you could stick at this phrase, aren't you? But we do anticipate that shortly as well. It's kind of all a domino effect, from the planning into the capacity into the tribal application, et cetera, et cetera. And just there's a grand schedule for all of that, but it's all dependent on the last one happening. So so it hasn't been released yet, but we anticipate that in the fall as well. And so we're just trying to figure out how we can help connect folks for that. But yes, I'd be happy to do that. Okay. Let's see here. Let me grab that link for you really quick. And what else, you know, since we're kind of in this gray area, as I mentioned, what else are folks wondering about within the digital equity process, or things that, you know, that are currently kind of in that TBD state? What can we provide information on today? More people in the waiting room too. Let me get them in here. Mariana, go ahead.
I'm really curious to hear more about how, I guess, I don't know if it's ACA or NCIA or anyway, how the idea of collaborations and partnerships looks in terms of best practices. So I'm wondering, not today necessarily, like, oh yeah, I'll just throw together a presentation right now, here it is. No, but I'm just wondering if maybe we could have a discussion at some point more around that, because we've heard a lot about partnerships and collaborations, and obviously that's going to strengthen applications and strengthen our impact. And so we'd be, you know, more likely to delve into that. At the same time, I'd want to be sure that we're following the best practices of collaboration, so that we aren't just saying and coming up with stuff and then losing the focus or impact, you know, of our application, because collaboration and partnership is also very challenging. So
Yes.
that's, yeah, I know, you know what I mean. So
yeah. No, you're good. And I really appreciate that question. And, you know, unfortunately, some of those pieces are not at a stage where we can share them quite yet. You know, we do anticipate, you know, once we get through the curing period, we'll be able to share what that's going to look like a little bit more, which doesn't help for today very much. But I think the thing to kind of think about is, as a state, you know, we are receiving just over $16 million for this first pot of money for the capacity program, okay, for the subgrants, and, you know, basically implementing the plan. So we've got a lot of organizations in the state that are doing this work already. And if every single one of them came to us individually with an individual application, we would run out of money really, really quickly, right? And so I think that from where we're standing right now, it's looking at how your work and other organizations that are working adjacently to you, either, you know, the same covered population or the same, you know, distribution model or the same general program, how can you leverage the resources of two organizations to make a bigger impact? And you're totally correct that it's all back to, you know, how much are we moving the needle with this program, right, or this project? And so I would recommend taking a look in the digital equity plan. There's an amazing list of organizations in the state, which we recognize is not necessarily fully complete, because things have changed since we wrote it. But, you know, it's a good starting place to look for organizations that maybe are working in the same, you know, demographic as you are, or the same part of the state, or the same, you know, fill in the blank, right? There's different ways that organizations are connected throughout the plan, both in there's like a spreadsheet version of an asset inventory in there that talks about what covered populations each organization serves. And then there's also kind of a description piece that goes a little bit more in depth about some programs that are already happening and things like that. And so at this point, I think that it would be good to look at those pieces of information and see what sorts of, you know, organic connections are made between your organization and others, and to start having those conversations with them. Hey, are you planning, to go after some of this money? What's your program look like? How can we slot in where you have, a piece that you need strength, right? Something like that. And then that will put you in a good spot for when the applications, when the details of the application are able to be shared, you'll be able to start with all of that groundwork having been done. Does that help? Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think someone might be, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. I was getting a little bit of feedback. So I think that Steve had his hand up next. Let's go to you, Steve, and then we'll get to Gordon next, okay?
Okay, so Aaron, a couple of things you might just remind people about which are the covered populations, in case maybe you said it and I missed it.
Well, there are a lot of them.
They don't know who the covered populations are. So that was the first thing. The second thing is that relationship to the question that Mariana was asking about in terms of partnerships. I've started to have some conversations with some larger organizations that have statewide outreach and who have experience in writing grants, managing grants, financial reporting, and how they can perhaps take a lead in some areas and be able to build relationships and partnerships with some of the other or smaller organizations, as you were talking about, who don't have that capacity. And I do think that that's really important because those organizations also can provide some continuity after all this money runs out. So I'll be glad to talk to you more about that offline. But I do think that there's some real opportunities there that'll make it easier for some of the smaller organizations to participate.
Yeah, agreed. And thank you for the reminder. I live in these terms all the time. So sometimes I think that I say things and I don't actually say them out loud. They're just bouncing around in my head all the time. So I did drop this in the chat as well, but the covered populations that I refer to, and these are defined by NTIA and Congress, in the original language from all of this back in 2021, are individuals who live in covered households. That basically means low income, aging individuals, incarcerated individuals, veterans, individuals with disabilities, individuals with language barriers, so that's English language learners, and also low levels of literacy, individuals who are members of a racial or ethnic minority group, and then individuals who live primarily in rural areas. So I think that the key takeaway from that is here in Arizona, more than 80% of Arizonans are in one or more of those covered populations. So it's really, you look at the list of covered populations and, looking at it from an organization perspective of people who are serving our vulnerable Arizonans, you're like, oh yeah, them. So it's a good list because of that, because these are, the groups that are historically vulnerable in other ways, and they are definitely the folks who have also historically experienced digital inequity. If you'd like, fuller definitions of all of those kinds of things, I would definitely point you towards the digital equity plan. There's a lot of detail as far as, those populations in relation to the state as a whole. So that's a really good resource. Gordon, I see your hand up.
Hey, yeah, I'm kind of concerned about people with disabilities. I've spent 50 years as a disability advocate on the national scene and in local organizations. And I'm also a telecommunications person, and I come from a background of community advocacy, looking specifically at how effectively, equitably telecommunications serves our community. And I've been working at the forefront of these technologies all my life. When I think of people with disabilities, it's such a large group. It's 1 in 4 of the people in Arizona on average. And they're not joiners. They don't belong to a group. They're all different groups. The first people that ever discriminate against us are usually our families. So it's one of those things in our society that people are not very accustomed to accommodating, with respect to the bias, which is why we have like a 22% unemployment rate for people with disabilities. So my concern is, I've been trying to follow this process from the beginning. It's just hard to see how to come to help that. So thank you. I'll just listen.
Can you say that last bit one more time? I'm so sorry. The sound cut out for me. Could you repeat your last line?
Sorry, I'm just concerned on how we're going to approach engaging with that community to make sure that the benefits of broadband, which by itself and alone aren't going to do much, without the software, without the experience on the ground of those people and their families, in finding solutions. And it's going to be pretty challenging. And as I said, it's such a large group that it affects every family pretty nearly. So with the budget cuts also, it's very concerning. What kind of service can we deliver? Not everyone's going to be benefiting in the future from subsidized services. So with respect to people with disabilities, there should be, I submit, a commons in our communities where this wireless infrastructure and other resources can be made available. And I'm hoping we can, the way to grow that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments. I really appreciate that perspective. And when we were in the planning period for both BEAD and digital equity, every effort was made to collect the feedback from the specific members of the population. But this isn't a one and done conversation. To your point, we want to continue to make sure that anything that does happen at the state level, the local level is in alignment and is always working for the folks who we're trying to serve. So I thank you for bringing your voice into the space and keeping us on that track. And if there are any, if there's an opportunity, if you'd like to, I would love to have, a one-on-one conversation on pieces that you're seeing that we're not, quite making the mark, so that we can do better as well. Okay.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Of course. And I'll connect with you via email after this meeting. Okay. So Paul, I see your question as whether or not this recording will be emailed out. So we actually collect these monthly webinars and post them on our website. And let me grab that link for you. You'll see the recordings of the digital equity previous conversations here. And then we also have the BEAD recordings as well. And then one other piece on that, while I'm grabbing this, oops, sorry about that. The other spot where we try to connect out with the community is through our engagement tour. We're going in person around the whole state to every county and every tribe. This is, reestablishing and making sure that we're keeping the relationships that we built with all of our constituents, if you will, everyone in Arizona, every county, every tribe, and, obviously with a focus on the covered populations throughout the planning and writing process for both BEAD and digital equity. We made some great friends across the state while we were doing that. And we want to make sure that we are continuing to have those conversations with folks as well. So just as another opportunity to come and hang out with us and in person and make sure that we're always hearing what we need to hear and having as many folks involved as possible. Let's see here. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, Ken, so I see Nicole replied to your email referring to rural. How are we defining it? And yes, there's a great definition in the chat there for that, straight from the NOFO for the digital equity program. And there are a couple of really great resources which I can share as well. There are some maps that are already in development around this and what it looks like, for both the BEAD side of things and the digital equity side, because I know a lot of us are kind of in both of those spaces. It's a really great way to look at where the needs are as far as connectivity through our challenge portal, which the challenge process is completed, as Jamie mentioned at the top of the meeting, but this resource is still a great thing to kind of keep in your back pocket to kind of look and see what the current status is as far as connectivity in the state. And then we will also be, of course, sharing those maps when the service areas are defined and all of that And then I also wanted to share this resource from NTIA, and you can drill down to the state level on some of the some different, you know, metrics that we're looking at as far as the DE side of things is concerned. And actually, I just realized I grabbed the wrong one. Hold on one moment. Okay, there we go. Okay. So the second link that I'm dropping here is another really great one to see kind of where those covered populations are physically in the state, but also, you know, percentage wise of who we're trying to serve. Let's see here. Gordon, is your hand up again, or is it still up? I just want to make sure that I don't miss you.
Sit.
Oh.
Hands down and applause.
Oh, okay. No worries. Gotcha. I just didn't want to miss anything. Okay. Okay. Are there any other questions or comments at this stage of the game that anyone would like to address? So happy, of course, to, you know, to keep that piece open, but just so that we don't have enough dead air here. Our next steps, as I mentioned, you know, over the summer, we will continue to host these webinars or conversations, I should say, because they're definitely not webinars. In July, we hope, you know, that we have a little bit more information to share about some of those timelines and what, you know, stage in the process we're in. And then definitely keep the August date on your calendar. It's always the third Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever today is, third Tuesday. So you can kind of keep that in mind. And those links will be shared on our website. We do anticipate having Local First come to that August event so that we can kind of dive into that, you know, what it means to be a good subgrantee kind of conversation. And so those are our next big things coming as far as this space is concerned. And Steve, I see that your hand is up. Go ahead.
So Aaron, you know, I have to remind people to download the chat.
Yes, so you are correct. You can definitely download the chat. And just as a reminder, we will be posting, you know, a recording of this conversation as well via that content library link that I shared before. Elena, I see your question. Is there any one specific thing that we should be doing to prepare for the capacity grants before our next meeting? I don't think, other than, you know, kind of feeling out what your specific projects might be. And I know, you know, you've been thinking about that, and, you know, where those potential partnerships could be. As far as specifically before this next meeting of this space, no, because until we have, you know, a little bit more detail to share, unfortunately, there won't be a bunch of action items for you as a potential subgrantee. But I think, you know, just thinking through where your organization and the work that you're doing fits into the goals and objectives of the digital equity plan, thinking about what that ask might look like, knowing that we have $16 million as a state. And, you know, if I open this up to anyone, of course, you know, until our actual subgrantee process opens, we're happy to have individual conversations. You know, if there's something that you're spitballing, you know, we can kind of have a sidebar on those kinds of things. Of course, once the applications are actually open, then we can't have those conversations because that would be unfair. But between now and then, you know, if there are specific questions that you have about a program or a project, we'd be happy to have those conversations. Isaac, I see a question from you. Is the BEAD Local Government Forum going to be rescheduled? Yes. So for those of you who were aware, we had intended on having an in-person forum for local government this past Monday, yesterday, and it unfortunately wasn't looking like the right day to get all of the right people in the room. And so we did postpone it. So we will be sharing information when that gets rescheduled. Again, apologies for the short notice on that, but we were looking at the registrations and just thinking, there's got to be a day where we can get more folks in the room so that it's a good use of everyone's time. So thank you for that question. And you will be hearing from Kelly when that date gets rescheduled. Okay. All right. Anything else that's bubbled up to the top of anyone's minds that they would like to address today?
So Aaron,
Yeah.
just FYI, I've just put in the chat that the Arizona Economic Recovery Resource Center that's going to be doing your workshop also has a funding workshop coming up on June 26th. And I put the link in to register for that.
Okay, thank you. I don't see the link yet, but
I haven't uploaded it yet.
oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. I thought you said you posted it.
Well, I just put it in there.
There it is. Yes, fantastic. Yeah, there are a lot of really great things happening that might not be specifically BEAD or digital equity related, but the concepts are the same, right? And so I appreciate you sharing that. If there are other things that show up on people's radars that this group might benefit from knowing about, feel free to either email them to us and we can share out as well. I'm just going to put my email in the chat in case you don't have it yet. So I think most folks here do, but always happy to see people's names pop up in my inbox. And yeah, so totally respect the fact that if folks are ready for a 10-minute break before their next meeting, those are the key points that I did want to share with this group today. And next month, we can dive deeper into hopefully the Arizona timeline if we're able to share more details at that point. And if not, we can pick back up on that conversation around the competitive grant program and make sure that we have it. Oh yeah, okay, gotcha. Okay. Okay, well, if folks are out of questions, I'm happy to end the meeting 10 minutes early. I hope everyone has a great, next couple of weeks here until we see you again. There's a couple of great holidays in here, so happy Juneteenth and happy Pride and happy 4th of July and happy birthday to me. So I'll see you all next month. And if there's anything that I can do for anyone in between now and then, please feel free to reach out. And I'll give you 9 minutes back.
Thanks. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Sharon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy birthday. Thank
Hey,
you.
look at all that cake. Who sent me cake? I love it. Oh, Isaac sent me cake. Love it. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you. Thanks, PJ. All right.